Welcome everybody to our first Pastel Society of Southern California Zoom themed Thursday meeting of 2023. Yoo-hoo. And I'm glad you all could join us. We have 36 folks on board now. I'm not sure, that might be a record. I don't know. That's pretty good. Pretty good. I would guess that might have something to do with our esteemed demonstrator, Susan. So
I think so.
yeah. So,
Gosh.
Maureen, would you like to introduce her to us?
Yes, I'm delighted to do so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm delighted to introduce Susan. I've gotten to know her from first talking to her on the phone about doing a workshop for us. And then I took some classes with her and found out how good a teacher she really is. And then I met her in person finally at IAPS last year, where she was manning what we call the candy store and doing demos for a couple of days. And everything was really, her work is really dazzling. If you've looked at the sample photographs in the workshop announcement, or you've checked out her website, you know that. She's not only accomplished in the area of pastel, she also is an oil painter, and she does work in other drawing media besides pastels. As highlighted her, she's known for her mastery of light, and she can show that in any subject. She paints landscapes, still lifes, florals, and figurative works. And I think tonight she's going to work on a figurative thing. Now Susan has a great pedgree. She's studied in a couple of art schools, but she's also studied with two of the greatest artists of our era. She studied with Albert Handel for 2 years, and she also served as a studio assistant. So and then she moved on to study with Richard Schmid in Chicago. So she has studied with the best. She's also in the pastel world. She's IAP's master pastelist and a signature member of the Pastel Society of America, the Pastel Society of the West Coast, and the Northwest Pastel Society. And she also founded a pastel society called Midwest Pastel Painters, which is now known as Chicago Pastel Painters. Now, I'm going to make a plug now for her workshop. She's going to be in town putting on a workshop for PSSC. It's a 3-day in-person workshop from February 13th through February 15th, and it will be at Riviera United Methodist Church, our usual venue in Redondo Beach. The cost for that workshop is $425. We have a few spots left in the workshop, so if you rush off at the end of this demo, you can get one of them. We sent out notices to all our members, and the most recent one was a reminder sent out on either January 3rd or January 4th. But if you can't find it, or you haven't received one because you're not a member, you can go to the PSS website, info at psscwebsite.org. And on the homepage, you'll see a heading called Upcoming Events, and there's a link there to the workshop description and any information you might need about it, and also a link to register. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Susan and sit back and enjoy.
Hi.
Okay.
There you are.
Hey. Well, I'm really a morning person, so this is like late at night for me, but I paced myself all day, so I had plenty of energy left for this. So I am going to thank you for that lovely introduction. And I have been very, very fortunate in my life to study with some of the best teachers. And I feel like it's my joy, but also my responsibility to kind of pay it forward and share all the great knowledge I've learned along the way. So that being said, I will flip over to my camera and I'll explain to you what I've done and what I'm going to do this evening. This is one of my favorite models. Her name is Tasia, and she's in a lot of my paintings the last several years. I usually have 1 or 2 sessions in the summer here with her, with all the beautiful flowers and places around Portland, doing a photo shoot. And I've sketched her from life, and yeah, so she's just my favorite. So what I've done here today is I'm working on Lux Archival Sanded Paper. That's my newest, latest favorite paper.
Okay, that's fine.
This piece is I'm doing 12 by 12. And what I love doing, and I kind of played around with this all during the pandemic, of doing watercolor underpaintings on this Lux Archival, and it's just a wonderful paper. It's like totally flat. It doesn't curl or buckle, and it takes any medium you want to put on it for underpainting. So because I'm doing watercolor, it takes me a couple layers of color to get the darks I want. So I went ahead and drew it out and did the first layer. I did a little more detail with my pastel pencils on her face because it's so small and it's hard for me to focus on that while I'm talking. And the other thing I did, and this is something I kind of played around with and fell in love with, is using this pastel ground. And I had this sitting around the studio. Someone's got to mute themselves, you guys. Someone mute out. So I won like a local show a few years ago. I won like an award, and part of the award was like a little gift bag from Blick that they put together, and they had this in there. And during the beginning of the pandemic, when I was like really isolated and like, well, I looked at it, I'm like, textured acrylic primer. Let's see. So I started playing around with it. I fell in love with getting the extra texture. So what I did, I drew it out, and then I put this on everywhere where I wanted to have extra texture, which is basically the flowers and her hair. I don't use it in the background. I found that it was just too much distraction in the background. So I use it in the foreground and the lighter areas. So that's what I did up till now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the next layer of watercolor. And then while the watercolor is drying, I have a PowerPoint to show you all that has some step-by-steps of my process. And you can see some other examples while this dries. And then I'll come back and apply some hard and soft pastel layers. So I want to get the goal of my underpainting is to get my darks as rich and dark as I can. So like I said, I kind of blocked it all in. I'm going to do another kind of round of darks.
Susan, I think you were muted.
Oh, have I been muted the whole time, or did someone mute me?
I think the host muted you. I think
Okay,
he
well,
muted everyone and you were included in the bunch.
Oh, well, thank you for telling me. Okay, so now I'm back. So I don't know what the last thing was that you all heard, but I can talk while I paint. So if you have a question, unmute yourself and ask away. You don't have to wait till I'm done or anything. I can talk and paint. It's one of my superpowers. So I just kind of look around and I'm squinting my eyes to kind of really pull out a pattern of the big dark shapes, the bigger shapes. I want to get a really nice dark. I'm going to mix up a alizarin and ultramarine blue combination with some burnt umber and really get a nice rich dark back here. You know, the watercolors dry lighter than when you put them down. So that's why you have to kind of watch it and usually do 2, sometimes 3 layers of watercolor to get what you want. I tried in the beginning of the pandemic. There's a watercolor painting out of Minnesota, Andy Evanson, and he's one of the, I think, one of the best watercolorists. And he was teaching a Zoom workshop. So I signed up for it thinking, oh, I really miss my watercolors, because I started, my first medium besides drawing was oil painting, and then watercolor, and then pastel. So I haven't really done a straight pure watercolor painting in like really decades. So I thought, you know, I have so much time on my hands with this crazy pandemic. I'm going to try to get back into watercolors, because up to that point, I've only been using my watercolors as an underpainting medium, not as a, you know, painting medium. So I signed up for this class, and I have to say I was completely humbled. Watercolors, I forgot how hard they are. And I basically can say honestly that I sucked at it. And I thought, you know what, it's stressing me out. You have to think ahead so much that I just decided I'm going to keep it as an underpainting tool. Because if I go over a light area, I don't have to worry, because my pastels will bring out the lights. And I'm much happier that way. It's just more relaxing for me. But I really appreciate watercolor painting more than ever after taking that 3-day Zoom workshop.
This is Christine Obers. What brand do you use of watercolor?
Oh, maybe I was muted when I said that, but I have Sennelier watercolors, but I don't.
Sennelier. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to run out. They're a more expensive brand, and for the underpainting, I just really tell people to use what they have, or you know, buy a decent set, but you don't have to get the top of the line, because it's really just for the underpainting. All right, so I'm going to just get a little bit more of the greens around. I'm going to mix up a cerulean blue and a cadmium yellow mixture and get some lighter greens, warmer greens over here. And this is a part of the painting when I tell my students, you really cannot ruin it at this point. You cannot mess it up, because anything that you do here is fixable. If you feel like you mess something up, you really can. So I like to tell my students to really like play with this and be a little freer, and you know, play with the color, you know, just get big shapes. Don't worry about the details. It's way too early for details at this point. And I have, like, I'm painting right over this kind of iron gate. I may or may not put it in. I can decide that later, but if I were doing a watercolor, I'd have to kind of plan ahead for that. So, and I do other kinds of underpaintings, and when I teach my workshops, I demonstrate different different underpainting approaches. I also do a lot of alcohol wash over the pastel. I've done acrylic underpaintings. I've even done oil underpaintings. Like if I have my oils, if I'm working on an oil painting and I have leftover paint and I don't want to, and I know I'm not going to get back to the oil painting for, you know, before it dries out, I sometimes have done a light oil wash on this paper. It works beautifully. You can use inks, really just about anything you can come up with. So I don't know how many of you have done this kind of technique, but it's just a fast and fun, get really quick results. So I try to, you know, really get close to the local color and close to the value for the underpainting, because it just saves me a lot of pastel, a lot of time and a lot of pastel. And it's fun. And that's really the most important thing. So like in this area where there's a lot of like greenery, but there's a lot of her dress showing through, I'm just going to paint it more of a solid color with the greenery, because I know I can come back in with the little, it's kind of like sky holes, but they're dress holes. So I just kind of think of it as one mass, and I'll come in later and pull out the little shapes of her dress behind the leaves. And you'll see really when I get into the soft pastels, how much fun that pastel ground is, what kind of texture it gets. So this is my second kind of round on these beautiful flowers. Sadly, this is a friend of mine's garden. Her name is Wendy, and she no longer has this place. She got leukemia and had to move and lives with her daughter. And so I don't have this garden. I've painted in this garden for, I don't know how many summers, but it's just, she was a master gardener, and it was just right around the corner from me. So I'm having a little moment here. I'm really sad that I won't have this space anymore, but I did a lot of paintings. I actually put together for her a little PowerPoint presentation of all the paintings I did over the years in her garden, and it was, she loved it. It was really, really fun. So I have to move on and find other gardens and other beautiful places, which there's no shortage of up here in Portland. So just going to get a little bit more rich color on these pink flowers. She was always telling me the name. I'm really, really bad with names of trees and flowers. I for some reason, I can't remember. She would always be telling me what this was and that was. And I'm like, I just painted. I can't remember what it's called. I don't grow them well either. I'm not a master gardener like her. I say I could immortalize them in paint, but I'm not so good at growing them. And I'm going to get a little bit of a pale, I'm just going to use my ultramarine blue, get a little bit of shadowy color on these white flowers on the shadow side. A little bit more over here on this right corner, and then I'm going to let it dry. I tell you folks, and still after years of doing these Zoom classes, I'll never get used to the silence of me hearing my voice, knowing that everyone's looking. It is the weirdest thing to get used to. So ask questions if you have any. Then I don't feel like I'm alone. No one has a question.
Susan, I have one.
Go ahead.
What I missed the name of the archival paper that you're using.
Oh, Lux Archival sanded paper.
What's the first word? Lux?
Lux, L-U-X, Lux Archival.
Yeah,
And
okay.
it only comes in white, and it only comes 400 grit. And I love it, love it, love it. I love it for underpaintings. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
There used to be a paper long ago called Wallace pastel paper. Do any of you remember that?
Yeah.
Yes. So Kitty Wallace lived up here. She was from Santa Cruz or Santa Rosa, one of those places in the Bay Area, but she moved up here shortly after I moved up here, way long ago, like in 1990. And she had this wonderful paper, and we all loved it. We all bought it all up, and she sold it, all over the place. And then she had some family problems and business problems. And as you probably all know, there's no more Wallace pastel paper. And I was devastated, and I moved on into UArt paper. I tried some other ones. I decided to stick with the UArt at that time. And then somewhere in the beginning of the pandemic, I discovered, I don't think this paper has really been on the market all that long, but I discovered it, I tried it, and I'm like, it's the closest thing to the Wallace pastel paper that I have ever used since the Wallace pastel paper. So I was thrilled, and I'm very happy with it. It comes in, you can get packs of 8x10 sheets. You can get 11x14, 16x20, and they have larger sheets, I think like 24x36. And it also comes in rolls if you want to, invest in a roll of it. But like I said earlier, it doesn't buckle. It just stays. It's really wonderfully. I don't have to dry mount it if I don't want to. Like some of the other papers, if I want to do a lot of wet medium, I have to mount it so it won't buckle, but this one, not at all.
Susan, it's not mounted, the one you're working on,
No,
right?
it's not. I don't really mount them. If I do anything like maybe even bigger than this, I would probably mount it, but for anything like this or smaller, I don't mount it, and I could just frame it like like a watercolor, like a piece of watercolor paper.
And what's the name of the paper again, the manufacturer?
It's Lux, Lux, archival.
Lux
Here,
Archival,
I'll
thank you.
show you. Hold on. Here, hold on. I'm rolling my chair back because I have it right here.
You can also get it at Jerry's Artorama if you're not close to a store. And they have a YouTube that you can look at.
This is what it looks
There
like, folks. Okay, Lux archival. All right, so again, if I were working just on my own and not doing a demo, I would let this dry, and I might even do another layer of watercolor, but for the sake of the demo, I'm going to call it good here, and I'm going to let it dry in a second. One more little darks over here.
Susan, it looks like you were very careful about your drawing of the woman. What are you using? A pencil, pen, charcoal?
Yeah, I did some gridding. I do use gridding if as needed, like if it's just a straight landscape, I don't grid, but something like this. And what I show you when I do the workshop, one of the days of the workshop, I show you how I grid everything. I have a really cool, fun, easy way to grid things out. So I did do some gridding, and then once you do the underpainting, I come back in with a pastel pencil or even sometimes just a lead pencil, and kind of redraw it. So that's what these lines here. It was the watercolor, and then I kind of pulled out some of the lines that I lost when I did the underpainting. Okay, I think this will be good enough. I'm gonna let it sit for a minute. Actually, I'm gonna do one more run through on that background. I'm going to mix up that ultramarine, alizarin, and burnt umber combo and just get a little bit more dark right back here around her. It's fun to do this with acrylics too. If you have acrylics, I don't tell people to go out and buy a whole new medium, but a lot of people work in more than one medium besides pastel. So whatever you have, like acrylics, are really fun. Their colors are a little stronger, so you don't have to do as many layers. They're a little more, strength to the impact of the colors. If you do use like a tube paint, like acrylic or oil, you just want to make sure you don't get thick. You want to keep it thin. That would be the only word of caution if you're doing other mixed media. And so I'm looking kind of for this pretty shape back here. Kind of framing her out real pretty. She's a beautiful woman, and she thinks that she's awkward. She'll tell you, when we model, she's like, I'm so awkward, I'm so klutzy. I'm like, yeah, you're just so horrible. Just keep being your klutzy, horrible self. And then I always tell her, I've sold just about every painting of her I've ever done. So I'm like, yeah, you must be really awkward and klutzy and nobody wants to look at you, huh? It almost kind of makes her more charming because she doesn't really know how beautiful she is. So now I'm doing it like a really kind of very little water, and I'm using a Payne's gray and burnt umber. I'm just going to get some real good darks on her hair. And then I'm really going to stop and show you my PowerPoint. I'm going to move my watercolors away. Okay, so anybody have any questions thus far on what I've done? Okay, someone has to let me share screen, okay? Whoever's in charge there.
Yeah, Chris, I think is getting it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, hang on a second.
All right,
Okay, hang on a second. You gotta,
okay.
Susan, I get to go to an Andy Evenson workshop in Mexico in about a week.
Oh, gosh. Have you studied with him ever?
I have just like a 3-day workshop. I love his work. I did his Tucson Art Academy online also.
Okay. How we doing over there with the,
Okay, I need some help on how to make her share the screen here.
Chris, the share button's at the bottom.
Yeah, but how do I make just her share it?
I think you have to let everybody share. It'll say let participants share or something like that.
Okay. Oh, yeah, multiple participants.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I had to just highlight you.
There you go. You got it. You did it. Very good. I know we all have to be tech people, don't we?
Yeah.
I know. All right. So this short little PowerPoint. Hang on there. There we go. So my friend up here who does my video stuff with me, she made me this most adorable logo with these little soldiers. They're like my little pastel soldiers. They're very cute. So if you want to see more, I have some short demos. I'm a Blick featured artist, and there's this link will take you, and I could send this link to Margie and she can send it out.
Sure, happy to.
Yeah, I'll just do that. So there's 4 demos on my page. There's this Dahlia Field one. I did a pet, I did a landscape, and I did a portrait. And they're short. The longest one is like 9 minutes. So they're kind of speeded up little thingies. So you can check out some other things. And then that's Tasia. That's my girl. I got the first place in the last year's, or this, 2022 Pastel Journal, Pastel 100. Yay me.
Yeah,
My,
fabulous.
yeah.
Congratulations.
So I just want to point out, like, you see her hair here? I put that pastel ground on her hair, and you can see how it creates all this really fun texture. And I put a little bit on her shawl. That was it. So I don't use it everywhere. I just use it selectively.
What did you use to apply it?
Oh, the same stupid brush that I'm doing the underpainting with. I mean, that brush, it's like an old shoe already, you know. It's just a silly old Blick synthetic kids brush, and it does everything I need it to do. I do have one smaller brush if I really want to get a little area, but sometimes I've even used a palette knife. You can really do anything you want with that.
Susan, did you put that down on top of your underpainting or before you put anything down?
Okay, so there's 2 different approaches. So if you're going to do a wet medium, like watercolor, then you can put it on. I draw it out and then I just dab it on where I want it. And then I let it dry. It takes a little bit to dry because, it's like an acrylic paint kind of thing. It takes some time to dry. And then I can do the watercolor or any water medium over it as the underpainting. If you want to do like a pastel and alcohol wash, then you have to do that first and then let that dry and then put the pastel ground. It dries clear, so you can put it over the alcohol wash.
Great.
Okay.
Sure, thanks.
All right, so most of you probably all are familiar with Dakota Art, Dakota Pastels, right?
Yep.
So I just took this page from their website because it just shows all the overview of all our wonderful pastels. My go-to brands are Sennelier and Terry Ludwig. I don't use New Pastels anymore because they're a stupid company. They got bought out and they decided they're no longer going to make open stock for New Pastels. I don't know if you've heard this, but it was all the buzz at IAPS, and it's like a stupid decision, because why would you want to buy a set of anything where you can't replace a color? But that's what they did. So boo on them. So that's still on here. And I use Rembrandts. So I use soft and I use Rembrandts, which are kind of medium, and I use like Cretacolors for hard pastels. And then I use a variety of pastel pencils as well. And here, this is the pastel ground that I'm showing you. And I circled the Lux Archival, and I still do use UArt because it is a wonderful paper. I get people to show up to my workshops and classes with all kinds of papers, and I just, they're all, a lot of them are good. Some of them are not as good. I just like what I like, and I get the results I want. So I'm sticking with what I like. But I started, long ago on just pastel paper until I learned about sanded paper. And here's how we all arrange our boxes. I like to have people do a color chart just to kind of separate their values and learn all their colors. This was actually the new pastels, which again, I'm not using any longer, but you can kind of see how you would be able to test your colors and break them up into categories of value. As Maureen said, I studied with Albert when he still lived in Woodstock, New York, back in the late 70s. It was a fabulous time of my life, fabulous. I learned so much from Albert. It was such a wonderful experience. He really taught me how to teach. He used to, the second year I was there, he actually would have me follow him around from easel to easel and listen to the students ask their questions and have me watch how he answered the question. And I mean, like, where do you ever get an education like that? Like, you don't. So I just, I owe him a lot about as far as I am as an artist in pastels and oils. I did oils with him too. These are some of the pastels I did during that time. I lived in a house, rented a room from a Swedish woman, and you can kind of see the Scandinavian influence of her house. Then I went back to Chicago, started my own studio in the late 80s. And again, I would just lucked into Richard Schmidt had just moved back to Chicago right around the same time. This is the Palette and Chisel Academy of Fine Art in Chicago that he kind of had brought back to life. It was kind of getting decrepit, and he got grants and they fixed it all up. And it's a very vibrant, active place. These are Richard's paintings, not mine. But I got to sit and, we did upstairs, and the top is the studio, and we had models 2-3 times a week, and we just do head studies. And I got to sit, I would always sit like next to him or kitty corner behind him and paint along with him. It was amazing. So then I started my own series in Chicago called Women in Hats. And I just, had fun. That was my boyfriend at the time. And I came home from a sketching thing. I said, everyone just dresses so boring. Why does no one have any style? Everyone's just like boring. He goes, well, why don't you make up your own? So I did. I dressed up my sisters. These are 2 of my sisters and a friend, and I started photographing them. And it was really early in the 90s when I did all this whole series back in Chicago. And I also was very influenced by Norman Rockwell. That was like the first artist I became aware of when I was a teenager. And I loved how we would tell a story. So I guess I kind of wanted to be an illustrator, but I wanted to be a fine artist. So I think I like story paintings. And then this was in Chicago. Back in Portland, sorry. I continued the series. Became more of a landscape painter when I moved to Portland because I was living in the city and I just I wasn't an urban painter. So I just never really got into landscapes till I moved out here in the Northwest and found all these flower fields. And then I took my models and put them in hats and did them in the flower fields. And here, as she said, as Maureen said, I work in oils. These were just some of my oil painting commissions during before and during the pandemic. Okay, so now we're getting into the next slides. I just show like some process. So this is on new art paper. This was a commission I had from a student of mine. She had taken a photo of her 10 grandchildren. And they were all lined up, ready for a family St. Patrick's Day party. So she showed me this photo. I'm like, oh my God, that would be so fun. So I did this 15 by 30. It was mounted. I mounted it on Gator board. And I did a very detailed, you can see some of my gridding lines here. I did a very detailed drawing with my pastel pencils. And this is a watercolor underpainting. And then this is where I started to begin to layer up the colors. And then here's the finished painting. And it was so fun to do. I know people, some of my friends, I say, what do I charge for 10 people in a painting? I don't think I've ever done that many painting. And my friends all said, don't do it. I'm like, no, I want to do it. I love doing this. I have 2 sons. I raised 2 boys, and I never got to paint, polka dot dresses or bows and pink tights and purple boots. So I just had a blast doing this. And then here is more of just a head study. This is my younger son. So again, I drew it out, which is 2 pastel pencils, like a burnt umber and a fleshy tone. And then I did the watercolor underpainting on top of that. And then I start to build up the layers of hard and soft pastels. And after when I teach my Zoom classes, I always at the end kind of clean everything up and line it up so people can see exactly what I used for that painting. Here's another example, just the watercolor underpainting and then building up the pastels on top of it. And just some other, I love doing children, you can tell. And then another thing I talk about in my classes and workshops is working from, a lot of us are working from photo references. So we talk about what to leave in and what to leave out. And I used one of my boo-boos as an example, because this is a photo I took when I was visiting my sister in Chicago. That's her granddaughter. And I wanted to do this painting for her 60th birthday a couple years ago. So I did the painting. I was having a really hard time when it was like right here. And so I got on my Zoom call with some of my artist friends. I'm like, okay, girls, help me. I just can't finish this. So my friend said, what's that thing in the middle? And lo and behold, I looked at that thing in the middle, and it's this thing in the middle. I couldn't even tell what it was. And I'm like, oh my God, that looks horrible. So because this is on sanded paper and it's so user friendly, I took my brush, a stiff brush, and I brushed this whole thing off. And it just became a better painting. And then I could finish it. So we talk a lot about that, about, you can't put everything in. You need to decide whether you're painting plein air or from photos, you have to decide what to leave in and what to leave out. And here's my plein air setup. This is the iris fields up here in Portland. And here's another example of a pastel with an alcohol wash underpainting. So I did the drawing. I laid in big flat colors of my hard and soft pastels, and then I use isopropyl alcohol to turn it into a paint, let it dry, and then I start to layer up, and that's the finished piece. And here again is another example of the the alcohol wash. So I break it up into big flat shapes. It almost looks like an abstract at this point. And then I build up the layers of hard and soft pastels on top of it. And here's another watercolor underpainting. You can kind of see the progression here. I think you get the idea. You draw it out, the watercolor, build up the layers. Here's the actual photo reference, the watercolor underpainting, and then the layering to the finished painting. I love dappled light. It's like my passion. So I just put in some paintings of dappled light. It's one of my favorite subjects. This one, I guess, was on the email that you guys all got. I threw this one in because I just love to show the diversity of this medium. Put it, pastel for all seasons. I got spring, summer, autumn, winter. I love to paint for my travels. This was the last time I was in New York. I took this photo. And again, this is kind of how to manipulate your photo references. I really like this little scene. I did not like these dudes at the table. They kind of weren't what I wanted. So I made them disappear and I put another table there. I do a lot of Photoshop stuff. If you don't know Photoshop, it's okay. You could just do a thumbnail, good old fashioned thumbnail. So this was the finished painting. This was a demo painting too. And then this was more paintings from my travels long ago in Asia. Here's the last one here is a step-by-step, again, drawing it out with the pastel pencils. This is an acrylic underpainting. You can see it's a little more opaque than the watercolor. And then I build up the layers, and that's the finished piece. Okay, so that is my little presentation.
Thanks, Susan. Those are beautiful.
And then that gives us enough time. Let me see if I can lighten this a bit. That looks better. All right. And so now this is nice and dry. That was my plan. So I already did the redrawing, but as I said earlier, after you do the underpainting, you will lose some of your drawings. So if you need to come back in, that's the time to do it. So now I'm going to start. What am I going to do? I'm going to start. I have this image printed out next to me here, but I also have it over here on my iPad because my old eyes can't see that well. So I can blow it up on my iPad over here. Okay, so I'm going to start with her and kind of build it around, out and around. So I'm going to start to pick up either a hard or soft pastel. People always ask me, you know, when do you use the hard and when do you use the soft? And there's no like clear cut line there. Depending on your level of skill with it. If you're more new to pastels, I suggest you start with the hard pastels just because they're easier to layer. You don't get as much on there. You don't want to layer too fast. You want to keep, I like to work with a lot of thin layers. So, but if you don't, that being said, if you don't have the right color or value in your sets, then you pick up a soft pastel and you just don't apply as much pressure. So you know that this is a soft pastel, and if I hit it very lightly on my paper, it looks like this, and if I press, it looks like that. So you can get a large range of values with just one color by the amount of pressure that you apply to your paper. That's the one thing that's hard to show on Zoom is the pressure. So you just have to kind of, and I always suggest that you have a little piece of a scrap piece over here to test your colors, because even after all the many years I've been doing this, I still sometimes will put a color down and I'm, oh, and then I have this. This is an old stiff oil painting brush. You must have one because this is your eraser. If you build up too many layers of pastel, you can brush it all off with this. This paper will take it and take it and take it over and over and over. It's another wonderful thing. So I want to pull out some warmer, lighter greens and start to just, so that, again, the goal was to get most of my darks in there with the underpainting so I can come and sort of hit it up with the lights. And there's different ways that I will be applying the pastels. There's kind of this, I don't know, someone told me in my class it sounded like Morse code because I kind of go da, 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 da. So I kind of do that kind of thing. I do, as you just saw, I do some flat broad strokes. There's lots of different fun ways to make your marks on your paper. And I want to get some kind of more iridescent blues. I probably should have done another level of watercolor on her dress, but I didn't. So again, with pastel, you guys all know you work from dark to light, right? So I'm going to start substantially darker than I know I want to end up. And I do use a fair amount of pastel pencils in my work. After I get the layers going, I will start to use my pencils. I'll show you that in a little bit shortly. So I want to get some little light glowing on her hair right away. And I think you'll be able to see, I'll also zoom in a little bit too. You can see how I put the pastel ground on her hair. As I said before, I do it, I tried it in the beginning, like all over, and I wasn't happy with the results. So now I really just use it on the lighter areas. I don't want to get a lot of texture in my darks. I want them to be more kind of transparent and back in the painting. I don't want them to draw attention, and texture will draw attention. So on my tabletop here, I do have my pastel pencils, and I do use them. All the stuff you see me that I've done on her face, I've done with my pastel pencils. And I will pick up some other pastels in here too. Once I get some pastel going on here, then I come with the pencils, and rather than using my fingers to blend, I will use the pencils to smooth it out and blend it. I like that look. It adds another thin layer of color all over.
What brand of pencil are you using?
You know, I have a variety of brands. I like them all, and there's there's this, the Conti pastel pencils have a few colors I could not live without in my portrait work. So I kind of go more by like different brands have their own certain colors, mostly in the flesh tones I'm talking about. You know, the browns and the other colors are pretty equal across the board. So I just kind of have a variety of colors. I'm not stuck on a brand of pastel pencils. So I want to pop out her hair. So I'm going to work around her a little bit more and get some of these deep, rich greens, kind of get her to frame her out a little bit. And that's a really strong chromatic green. So I'd like to add like a darker gray into that. That's not dark enough. More of a dull green. There we go. So here, like I always like to match my values. So I want to keep the colors, a variety of colors, without changing the value. That's the whole beautiful look of this medium. So I'm going to get some more color going on her dress, her shirt, her little overcoat here. And then there's turning my pastel the long way to get some more strokes that way. There's all kinds of fun ways to play around with your sticks. And I really don't use any pieces bigger than this. I break even my half sticks that I get, I break those in half. So this would be like a really big piece for me. I sort of think of it like a paintbrush, and I wouldn't want to use a big wide paintbrush. So why would I use a big wide pastel? That's kind of my thinking. All right, I'm just going to start working a little faster here. You're a very quiet group.
We're enthralled.
Okay, good. I think either you're enthralled or you're falling asleep.
Did you say you did not do an underpainting on her skin or the dress?
I did, but then I went over it with my pastel pencils. I was thinking in retrospect, when I was redoing all the green, I should have done another wash on her dress, but I didn't. But I did do one wash on it, I did. I mean, I could do like a portrait demo, but when I'm trying to do a face like that big while I'm doing a demo, I just kind of worked on it this afternoon. But I just want to kind of show you the whole process. That's the point of it. And I will use my fingers minimally. I don't ever say never to use your fingers, but I'm not an over blender. An over blender, that sounds like something, and it would be a Seinfeld episode, huh? An over blender.
Yeah.
I also really like these little sparkles of light separating this layer from the back layer. That's a little strong, but we'll tone it down. And I will get some more dark around her. So when I do my workshop, I'm gonna, I'm not gonna do all figurative, but I will do one. At least. I kind of have to see what the whole group is all about, Some people really want to learn that. Some people don't have the drawing background. So I try and mix it up so there's something for everybody. In fact, when I was first teaching my Zoom classes, I would do a whole variety of subjects within one series. And then I did find that there's a huge variety of drawing background. I mean, I went to art school, as you've heard, and I spent a lot of years drawing, but not everybody does that, and not everybody's going to do that, and that's okay. So I try and keep the subject. So now I I kind of divided up my classes. So there's a series that's for all levels, and then I do a separate series for intermediate to advanced, that people that do have the drawing background and want to get more into figure and portrait. So I always do kind of pull out my pencils if I need to redraw anything. And I use pencils are also great for softening the edges of things. Okay, let's see what else we can do on this side here. So like for this kind of transparent, that's the pencils work great for that too. Like I can see some of her skin tone that's making it look darker on this part of her sleeve. And if I don't want to get a real heavy amount of pastel, that's where I use the pencils. Then if I do want to get heavier, like on the lights, I'm picking up this very soft, it's a pinky, kind of a really pink white. It's not pure white. And that's where I'll start to lay in the lights. And then I can see, when I lay that in, I can see, okay, I don't think I got this dark enough. So I'm always looking for the relationship between values from the lights to the darks. So I get a couple layers, you'll see me layering up hard and soft. And then I will pull out a pencil to blend it so it doesn't get over blended, but it pulls it all together. And we're going to get some more light on her sleeve. This is more of a cool white.
How do you sharpen your pencils, your pastel pencils?
Oh, that's the age-old question, isn't it? I
Yeah.
have tried every single pencil sharpener known to mankind. I have tried. And it is frustrating. So what I ended up doing, what I do, it's the old-fashioned box knife. And I have this wonderful sand pad at Blick makes at Blick. It's like this, it's like a paddle, but it's sanded paper.
I love that paddle.
Yeah,
use
it's the
all the-
only- yeah, that's the only way. I've broken so many pencils and pencil sharpeners. I got so sick of it. I just said, forget it. No more pencil sharpeners. It's not a glamorous part of the job, so to speak, sharpening the pencils, but you know, that's the best way I have found. In my fantasy world, I have an assistant that comes in every day at the end of the day and sharpens all my pencils for me. And then I have another person in the house that's making dinner for me, but that's my fantasy life.
I have an old fashioned Panasonic from like the 1980s, and it's you plug it in. It is the best pencil sharpener, and I don't think they make them anymore. It is amazing, and it sharpens everything.
It doesn't chew
Not
'em-
breaking.
it doesn't chew them up after a while.
Nope, never. It's like,
Wow,
yeah, I got two of them.
I'm jealous.
Sell one.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
jealous.
right. That's-
No, sorry. I can show it to you.
You could get rich on that.
Are you coming to my workshop?
No.
Oh, so I was gonna say I might steal it from you if you bring it.
This is it.
Wait till I take a break.
Panasonic auto stop.
Oh, they really don't make it anymore.
They really don't make it anymore. I just bought it. Yeah, I can put the model number in there. Maybe someone can find an old one. But it's the best ever.
Oh, well, I'm envious. I just gave up and I just, like I'll take my pencils in the house. I'm out, my studio's in a building behind my house. So I will take my little jar of pencils and my box knife and my sand paddle, and I'll put a movie on Netflix or something, and I'll just sharpen the pencils. Like I said, it's not a glamorous part of what we do. Yes, that same person that in my fantasy that sharpens my pencils also cleans all my pastels and puts them back. So that's that. So like I said earlier, I kind of went over this whole area, just the green. So now I can have fun with that and come in with, let me find a different green. I don't like that one. Okay, so, and then I'll do all kinds of fun little textury kind of different kind of strokes to get the, there's so many different layers of patterns in here of the different foliage, the way it grows. It's really so fun to look at the different ways leaves are on different flowers. So then that takes just some kind of energy and time to just get some fun stuff going like that. And then I have a light kind of bluish gray that'll come in between. It's the same idea if you're painting sky holes, So that'll take a little bit of time in there. So here's where I put a lot of that pastel ground. I don't know if it's showing up, but you can see it's just lovely. When you use the soft pastel on it, just like picks up chunks of it and just makes it kind of pick up the light. It'll be kind of equivalent. I think why I did it was I was missing my oils, and I missed, like with oil paint or acrylic, you can use your palette knife and really get some thick, texture, and it's harder to do that with our pastels. So that's why I started using the ground, and it's just like that same effect, like you were getting, using a palette knife with your paint. So now I'm going to paint kind of around the flowers and shape them a little bit. So you can kind of see, I think you can really see if you get, take some time with your underpainting. The rest of it starts to kind of go quick because you already have that base under there. So I also want to get some other colors in the green. I don't want the green to just be overpowering. So that's a little bit light, but I'm looking for more of like a grayish green, like an umber color. Kind of interject with the green so it doesn't like jump out at me all the time. That one's too light. So I'm going to look in on my tray to my left is my big counter where I have all my colors. And then in front of me, I get these little dollar store dealies, and I put foam in the bottom of them, and I pull out the colors that I want for that painting. So that becomes my working palette. So again, I'm kind of doing that tapping thing to get a certain kind of texture of these tall, whatever they are. I wish I could remember names of things. And then there's some just very chromatic, beautiful light on these flowers. I think I want to get a little bit going on in her hand over here because it just looks a little hanging there, a little light. And get some kind of grayish greens back in here. You can hear the energy of my hand going. Da, 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 da. Y'all still with me there?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Mesmerized.
I did put some of that pastel ground down here in the bottom. So can you see the texture, how it picks it up? And then if I want to, this is kind of a grayish pencil like this blue I put down here. Sometimes if I get too much of a high chroma color or too intense, I can come in with it, gray it down. I see underneath her chest, sort of picking up some interesting reflected light. And that's where I can pick up this pink pencil and very lightly kind of start to show that change of plane there on my horribly awkward model, right? She's beautiful, isn't she? I guess since none of you know my son, I can tell you the real story behind this girl. Some of you, if any of you have heard me in my class, some of you have been in my class, I recognized a few names, but my son, when he was a senior in high school, brought her home. He started dating her and wanted to introduce her to me and my husband. And she's 5'10" or something. She was a volleyball player. And he brings her home. And I'm like drooling, looking at her face. Literally like drooling. It was embarrassing. And I said, do you ever, would you ever want a model for me? And my son, who was at the time like 16 or 17, is giving me looks that would kill. I mean, if looks could kill, I would have been gone. He's giving me that, how can you be embarrassing me, mother? I just brought her home, So I brought her out here to my studio. I said, no, really, I'm not just, a stalker, Bob. I'm really a painter. And she said, okay, she's like, all right. And so that following summer, this was like Thanksgiving of his senior year in high school. And so we got together that summer and she did some modeling for me and it was really fun. And then she went off to college about an hour south of here. She got a scholarship to play volleyball and live at the school. So she went away and she came home the following Thanksgiving and she broke up with my son. She wanted to be free, she's away at college. He was still living at home, going to community college. And he said it was mutual, but I know it wasn't. But I never said anything. So this is one of those moments of my life and my mothering life where I question my maternal instincts, because where I should have been like, oh, my poor baby, his heart is broken. My first thought was, shit.
A model. Oh
I
no.
lost my model. So I'm like, okay, well, that's the end of that. I mean, I certainly can't bring her around. If they broke up, I wouldn't do that to him. I'm not that heartless. And then the following summer, I go down to the grocery store down the street here, and there she is behind the cash register. She's, cashiering for the summer. And I'm like, Tasia, hi. And she runs out and gives me a hug. And she says, how are you? And I'm like, oh, good. She goes, how's Matt? I'm like, are you guys friends? She goes, oh yeah, we're, but this time she had another boyfriend, he had another girlfriend. I'm like, oh, you're friends? Oh, you want to model again? So now Tasia's phone number is in my phone and we have a nice friendship, her and I. I think he doesn't really like it that much, but he doesn't say anything. And now he has a girlfriend who's really serious about, and he, he brought her over and he says to me twice in one evening, well, now you don't have to paint my ex-girlfriend anymore. You can paint Lexi. I'm like, oh, okay. I hear you. So I'm not going to stop painting this one though. But anyway, it's kind of a funny little side story. Okay, so anybody have any, it's 7:30 already. Geez. Okay. I'm gonna just pause a minute. I wonder if I can I pause the recording? No. If you want to pause for a second,
I can.
yeah, I just want to get up and stand back and take a couple minutes. You guys could ask questions. Yeah, you can see how you just have to get a good underpainting. That's the key to this. Get a color underneath and then just kind of lightly swipe on the soft pastel. It won't work with the hard. You need the soft on top of that texture. And, you know, it just picks up little particles of color. It's just so incredible. And you can play around with it. I mean, I don't have like a formula. People always want to know. I mean, you know, like in these flowers, I really like took my brush and right out of the stuff is really ugly. It's like really goopy. But you can kind of see where I dug my brush in there. I just like glob it on. Sometimes I'll add a little water, like down here, a little bit of water to it if I want to make it a little smoother. And you could actually use this stuff on like mat board or illustration board. You can like create your own paper, your own sanded paper. I'm just like way too lazy to do that, but you know, some people like to create their own surfaces. So that's another way you can use it. And like I said, I kind of stumbled on it. I didn't really know what to do with it. So, and I screwed up a lot of paintings in learning. So like the first demo I did with it, I was doing a small, like little 8x8 of a close-up of a pink rose that had raindrops on it. And I had this, you know, thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just, I'll put the pastel ground just on the raindrops. It's a nice idea, but the whole painting looked like a rose with chicken pox. It was just horrible. It was horrible. It didn't work. So I tell my students, you know, take some smaller pieces of paper and cut it up, you know, cut a piece of paper up into smaller do little paintings like that size and play around with it and learn, you know, kind of get a feel for it if you want to try it before you start it on a, you know, major piece of artwork. But again, I'll say, you know, once you get the underpainting process down, and that takes, you know, there's like a little saying in my class, you're not allowed to whine about your underpainting until you've done 100 of them. No whining about it, because it takes a while to learn the technique of doing a good underpainting. So
I was wondering if you found anything to replace New Pastel that you like.
yeah, I bought some Holbeins. Holbeins are kind of a little thicker square shape, you know, longer than the New Pastels, and Cretacolors. Cretacolors is very comparable to New Pastels. The same shape, the same size stick. The only thing that's lacking for me is there's a whole range of skin tones in the New Pastels that I've become very dependent on when I do my first layers in my portrait work. So I pulled out my big old set of Rembrandts. And Rembrandts, you know, when I first started pastels, that was all you could really get was New Pastels and Rembrandts. I mean, this is going back into the 70s. And so at that point, way back in the old days, Rembrandts were like considered soft pastels because we didn't have anything softer. But now that there's Terry Lugwood and Blue Earth and Sennelier and Schminke that we can get quite easily, they kind of the Rembrandts are more considered like a medium hardness, which is nice because it can work hard and soft. So I pulled out my Rembrandts and kind of matched these colors from the New Pastel set that I know I wasn't going to get anymore. First of all, the Blick store by me in Portland, right away when this was announced, they had a sale on the New Pastels. Buy 3, get 3 free. Can you imagine that? Buy 3 and get 3 free. They wanted to get rid of them. So I greedily went into the store and bought all my colors. Like I just bought them out. So I will be able to use them, but I will, you know, I don't recommend them anymore, obviously, because you know, like I said, if I said, go buy a set of 96 new pastels, which is the full set, you know, and then you run out of 2 colors, what are you gonna do? So, and I've talked to 2 different customer service people and they were useless. They're not gonna do anything about it. So that's the end of that. That's, you know, I got over it. I was really upset, but I matched the colors in either the Krita colors or the Rembrandts or the Holbeins. So you will be fine with all those. And if you never really used new pastels, then you don't have to worry about it because you don't even know what you're missing. So just don't even listen to what I'm saying. I'm just bitching because I'm still annoyed. I think it was a really, really stupid marketing idea. But I was told that Prismacolor, who is the company that makes the new pastel, was bought out by Rubbermaid. Go figure that one out.
Phew.
So the marketing people at Rubbermaid don't have a clue, obviously.
We could boycott Rubbermaid until they bring them back.
That's not going to happen.
I know.
You know, I mean, it's done. I mean, you know, already I wouldn't even buy them again because I wouldn't even trust that they were going to keep them around. So it's just weird because I started using them, you know, literally in the 70s when I first picked up pastels. So here I'm putting like a purpley color on top of the green to kind of push it back into the distance a little bit. And I'm going to get a little more darks in her hair.
Sue, can you kind of zoom back out a little bit? We're
Oh,
not.
I'm sorry. Right. No kidding. Thank you for telling me that.
Thank you.
All right. I just got to focus it again. It'll just bleep off and then it'll bleep back on.
There.
Okay. So like I said, then when I do the detail part, which is, I mean, I definitely will be finishing this painting. Not, I mean, obviously not tonight, but I will post it on my website when I finish it. And you are all welcome to sign up for my monthly newsletter, and then you'll see it. I always post my new artwork in my newsletter. So you can go on my website and do that if you feel like keeping track of what I'm doing. I have all kinds of Zoom classes throughout the year and in-person stuff at different places. I'm going to paint in Provence this end of the summer. Last summer, I got to paint in Italy. So in a way that, you know, the pandemic for us teacher people has been phenomenal because I have met people literally all over the world and I never would have met otherwise. And my whole workshop, see, this is what I like, really get sharp points on my pencil so I can come in when I need to do these little details. But my whole Italy workshop formulated out of my Zoom students throughout the pandemic from all over the country. So it's sort of like, it's the strangest, you know, strangest thing, because if it wasn't for the pandemic, I wouldn't have been meeting these people and I wouldn't have had this workshop in Italy. Very strange. One of the, you know, so much not so good stuff, but then that was sort of like a silver lining. So here's again how I use the pencils. Lots of thin layers, very light touch. It puts like a, you can see it just softens things. It'll push things back. Another thing I use is charcoal. You should, I always recommend you have some charcoal living with your pastels. So this is another great tool. This kind of just, instead of using a black, it's like a soft charcoal, you know, like a soft black. If I want to take an area and just kind of harmonize it and tone it down. So these are more like, you know, the finishing touches as I'm building up the hard and soft layers. So it'll be like kind of hard, soft, blend it with the pencils, and hard, soft, blend with the pencils. And I'll do that 2, 3, 4 times until I feel like I have what I want. Again, moving my arm around, shaping the foliage to how I want it. pop out some of these flowers, get some darks behind them. And then I can decide again what to leave in, what to leave out, how much detail I want to put in, how much I don't want to put in. You know, and then I use my pencils for, you know, like, if I need to get like a little sharp edge, that's not dark enough. Let's see here. There's a nice,
Do you manipulate your photographs quite a
I
bit?
do somewhat. This one I didn't so much, but I do. I that's another kind of silver lining of the pandemic is I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I would have said I'd had like kind of advanced beginner skills in Photoshop. And I've always wanted to learn more. And it was the perfect opportunity to, and I learned most everything. I had some friends that would show me things, but mostly I learned it on YouTube. You know, if I had like a question, I'd type it into the, you know, YouTube, and lo and behold, all these videos would pop up, you know, with how to do this, how to do that. And I love Photoshop. It is a great tool for us painters that work from photo references. It's just, I don't know what I would do without it. So here I'm using my pencil to just kind of play around with some of this. I kind of like the little pattern on the scalloping little thing on her blouse here. And I need to like kind of contour her body a little more over here. So yeah, so anyway, like I said, I will finish this one. I've been wanting to do this one for a while, and I thought this was a good way to show you how I approach a larger figurative painting. Another way to apply the pastels is kind of follow the form with your strokes, you know, like a little bit of a curve here. There's all kinds of fun ways to manipulate these beautiful sticks. All right, so let's see what else I can show you before we stop. Any areas that you were like wondering, how will I do this part? You can kind of ask. I'll see if I can show you.
I see a lot of hard white, I guess they're stems or sticks or something. I guess that's the last thing you do?
Hard white.
White, no, on the picture, the painting or the photograph. Yes.
Like here?
Yeah.
Oh, the
So
gate, the rod, the gate? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. I couldn't see what that was. I see now. So
Yeah.
you put that in later?
Yeah, I think I will. Yeah, let me do a little bit. Thank you. That's a great thing to show you to end with, because we only got like 10 minutes left. So yes, I will come back in. Like when I started this, I'm like, do I want to put that in? I don't know. So I just kind of ignored it, but let's just say I want to put it in. So I will take my pencil and kind of sketch it in lightly. This is just a brown pastel pencil. And again, I'm not going to do the whole entire, every little curly cue, but I will do enough. And it's got like this big swooping part over here. So I'll just sketch it in quickly. And then I will either use a pencil and or corner of a hard pastel or even a corner of a soft pastel. And see how that's going to be. So yes, this is like this wrought iron little fencing that she had up here.
Hmm.
And then I also, I can put it in and always knowing that if I don't like it, I can brush it out. I think I will like it though. I think I'm gonna end up putting it in. Kind of breaks up all the green in the front. Thank you for mentioning that. I was kind of forgot about that part. So, I don't have to do the whole entire fence or gate, whatever it's called, but just enough of it to indicate it's there. And there's a little part over here. Get a little bit of it going this way. Yeah, I think it'll add a nice little detail to the painting. I'll have to play around with it. So let's get some fun. So the ending, like when I really want to get some thicker stuff, that's when I would come in with my soft pastels and sort of press it on there. Press and twist is how I kind of call it. And that right on top of that pastel ground is just glorious. It's just so delicious. And then there's some flowers that come down in here. It's a big ambitious demo piece, but I don't know. I like to challenge myself, and
Right.
I think you get the idea how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
This is really great. I'm
Mhm.
totally loving this.
Thank you. I think I'm going to sleep really good tonight. So it's, it's almost 8 o'clock by now. I'm usually running my bath. I get up really early, not because I want to necessarily. I just get up early. I think it's an old age thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like try to get up early. I just get up and then I'm tired by the end of the day.
Yeah. Susan, we had a question about whether you'll be using the watercolor underpaintings and in the workshop.
Yes,
Sean,
I'm
do it
gonna do.
again.
I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna come back and see everybody. There you all are. Hi. Hi, everybody. You are still
Hi.
there. I know Robin. Robin was in my class. Hi, Robin.
Hi, Susan. Good to
See you in a
see you. Good to see you.
Yeah. Jan. Hi, Jan.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay. Linda Lafer. I know you. I know you, right? Yes. Oh, it's so nice.
From IAPS, and we have lots of mutual friends.
Yes. Hi. Okay, so I am going to do some watercolor, this kind of thing in the workshop. I'm going to do some of the alcohol wash in the workshop. I'll do some with figure, and well, there's 3 days, so I'll do 3 different. One day will be figure in the landscape, and one will be just landscape, and I'll figure out what the third one's going to be. So yes, we'll do a little bit of everything. Okay.
Sounds good.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Don't forget, we've got spots in the workshop. I think this demo sank the hook. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Come play with me. Come play with
yeah, come play.
Looking forward to it in February.
I am looking forward to getting some sun down there. So promise me, everybody, that this rainy stuff will be gone in February.
Oh,
Another month.
do our best.
Never rains
Yeah.
in February.
Right.
Well, it rains a lot here in February, so.
Oh.
All right, well, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope it was informative and
Thank you so much, Susan, and thanks for staying up so late with us. It was wonderful.
all right.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.